Hi everybody, how hard is it to draw the head from different angles? Pretty freaking hard, but not if you know how. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in this video, so let's check it out. Alright, so before we start drawing the skull from different angles, I want to start with the most basic shape, because the skull is a pretty complex form and we need to start with the most essential thing. So the skull is actually consistent of two things, a sphere and a triangle shaped thing. Let me show you what I mean with this. I was talking about a sphere, so let's draw a sphere, and the other thing is a triangle shaped thing like this, and I'll try to draw through the form here, and I do that very specifically because if I draw through the form I get a better understanding of the 3D elements that I'm drawing. When I'm drawing 2D flat shapes I don't get that much of an understanding of 3D, so I always advise you to draw through the forms. So when we have these two shapes, the first thing we need to do is to get a kitchen knife and to use that to slice on two sides of this watermelon or sphere or whatever you want to call it, and that's these things. Now where they are precisely differs from head to head, but let me show you why you need to do this, because when these two parts are off, so we get to this, it is more a representation of how the head actually looks, because, well, you'll see that when you look at my head, these sides are pretty straight down. So when we have these two, then we already have a head. Now, as I said before, try to draw through the 3D forms because then you get a better understanding. So if we use that on this shape, then we'll need to go all around like this. And of course, let's also go through the middle. So it'll be somewhat like this. Now, this cross, and then if we attach this thing to the bottom, then we get a sort of looking like a head shape. Let's try to draw this combined shape from a couple of different angles and see if we can draw, like, make a suggestion that this is a head. So adding this cross section on the front side of the head is a technique which is used a lot in manga and in animation to already show where the characters are looking. This actually is a way of quickly visualizing on a storyboard, for example, where a character is looking at. So it makes it really easy for a next step to eventually add in a face or skull or whatever needs to be added in there. Now, something you already see when adding this small ellipse here, or this very narrow ellipse, is that it already suggests that this face is probably going to be looking just slightly to the left or to the right. So these sides of the plane are actually very helpful for you, giving an idea of where the head is looking at. So what the angle of the head is. So, and here we have a couple of heads from different angles, and I really advise you to do this exercise a couple of times because it's a perfect exercise to warm you up for doing some more comprehensive exercises, but it's also a very nice exercise for you to get a better understanding of how to draw just simple shapes or forms from different angles. Alright, so this is all pretty nice, but as you probably know, the head is a lot more difficult. It's not just a sphere and a triangle, there's a lot more features on there. So let's have a look at some landmarks and proportions on the head and how they are like situated in relationship to each other. As like with our first one, let's start with some very basic shapes, because if we have the first basic shape, then it's already a lot easier. So here we have the hat. Now, there are a couple of very important elements that we can actually use on the head, and that is this side of the plane. I cannot stress enough how important this side of the head is, because actually everything we do is based off of this side of the plane. So the top is actually the hairline, and as you see, this is just like we have the top, of course, and then we have a certain range to when we get to the hairline. Then we get to this part is a little bit longer, and this is where the eyebrows are. So what I see in a lot of beginners, and I did this actually myself as well, is that I thought, all right, so the face is very long, so here would be the eyes. Well, actually, the eyes are here, so they're a lot lower than you would initially think in the beginning. Now, this is the underside of the nose, and then we get to the last part, which is the chin. Now, in this drawing, all these elements are approximately the same height. Of course, this differs from face to face, but approximately these are the same height. So this, in my opinion, is lower, a lot lower than this. So what I need to do is I need to change this a little bit. So let me grab my brush, or what is it? Eraser. And what you'll see is that it'll be something like this. Right. We're not aiming for perfection here. I'm just here to give you a little bit of an idea about what it looks like. So here we have the main things. Now, another thing that we need to be aware of is, like, this is the first range we need to go to, and the second step is actually going a little bit further. So we have an understanding where the hairline is, the eyebrows, the underside of the nose, and the chin, but where are the eyes, where's the mouth, etc. So when we divide this part up into 4 pieces, then this top piece is the keystone. And this is, I think, the most important part of the hat for placement of all the other features. Now, when we get to the middle of this is actually the underside of the eyes. And then here is the keystone. So that's actually where your head goes inwards, and then you'll get to the top of your nose. Then we have the nose, and then when we divide this part up into 3s, then this is actually the line of the mouth, and this is the top of the chin. So let me get another layer, and I'll lower this opacity just a little bit, and let's see if we can draw in some things in here. So first of all, let's make it very clear that the eyes are spheres. I know this sounds very obvious, but I see a lot of people drawing eyes very flat, like this. And then we are done. This is Robot Bob. Robot Bob. No, this is not Robot Bob. Well, what I want to say is that is that the eyes are spheres. So, as I said before, try to draw through the forms, because this gives you a better understanding of what's going on. So we have these eyes over here, which are spheres, and then we have the eyelids, which are going over them. So we have these eyelids going like this, and then we have the underside. Then here we have the keystone, the nose, then the top of the lips, eyebrows over here, like this. And let's lower this one a little bit more so it becomes more clear. Well, actually, a mistake I made is that the eyes are a little bit more to the top. Now, as you can see, the pupils are mostly attached to the top of the eyelids. This is because the eyelids are literally protecting the pupils of the eye. And when we look at the side plane, that's of course where the ear is attached to. Now, where do we place the ear? We place the ear exactly at the same line of the eyebrows and the underside of the nose. So the top of the ear is aligned with the eyebrows, and the bottom of the ear is aligned with the underline of the nose. So this already gives us a lot of information on the angle of the head. drawing the skull is really hard, but I'm gonna be using these first couple of shapes that we use, so the sphere and the triangle attached to each other, to start with the base and then eventually redefine the skull to a more specific shape. So let's start with that. Just to make it easy, let's say we are going to draw a skull from a 3/4 view, just like we did before, because then we can see the features on the side and on the front of the skull. So again, we have this sphere here, and then we have this. So this first drawing, it doesn't really matter if you do this, or like, it's just an underlying drawing. So we're not aiming, again, we're not aiming for perfection here. We're just focusing for like a range, or to give us a little bit more guidance on what we're aiming for. Of course, drawing a neck is not necessary for this one, but well, I did it anyway. Alright, so we have a base now. Again, let's start with the same landmarks that we had in the first drawing which I just drew, and from there we can start with drawing the features of the skull. We have the keystone somewhere around there. Then again, the chin seems to be a little bit too long. This is where the lips are. So yeah, so the line of the lip is actually a little bit higher than the place where the teeth hit each other. If I visualize it like this, these are the teeth and these are the lips. I think the biggest lesson I can give you with this is always try to stop drawing it from imagination and first observe. So the first step is always observe, and then the second step is reflect. What does this mean for my drawing? And then the third stop is draw. Instead of imagination and then draw. Because when you're starting out, at least when I was starting out, I had this super ego which thought, well, you can just draw anything. You're like a supernatural talent, so drawing a skull doesn't really matter. You can just draw a skull from your imagination. Drawing a cat or a tiger or whatever, you can always draw this from imagination. This is my super ego. And although I love my super ego, it's actually not a lot of help when I'm starting out with drawing, because I need to observe. First, I need to do this like 100 times before I can do it from imagination. So don't be fooled by what you see right now, that there's so much hours and so much time that has gone into this to get an understanding of where all these things are and to remember them correctly. It's just a lot of time, basically. Alright, so we have an understanding of these features, where they are. So we know that the nose is somewhere around here. We have these places. And then another thing is that we could actually, from this top part of where the ears would be, we could actually draw a line down. And what you'll see, this already gives like a shape like this. And then this would go like this. Now this part is also very important. This is actually where there's a line, you can actually feel it, where the side of your eye sockets are. Oh wait, sorry, I'm making a mistake. So this is where your eye sockets, of course, are, because this is where the half is of your, where the undertone is of your eyes. You can actually feel it yourself. And then here is where your sleep is. Alright, so here we already have some landmarks for the skull. And let's try to draw the skull in there. So again, I'm gonna lower the opacity of this layer and try to draw in the skull. So first, what I'll do is this keystone. Again, this keystone is so freaking important because it's really the center of your face. You can actually see it here as well. It's like really, it's really defining where my eyes are, where my nose is. I have such a big nose, but it really shows you a lot of stuff. Now, the keystone goes so inward, outward, and then we have this hard stop, because here is where your nose, like the bone stops, and it becomes this other part. I really should enhance my knowledge of anatomy names, but for now it just works fine. So we have this nose right here. Then we have the eyes. So if you could feel it, you can actually see that the slope of your eye socket is a little bit tilted. It's not straight, it's not like this, but it's a little bit tilted. So it'll go like this, and it'll go pretty far out. I mean, I don't advise you to do this, but if you feel just at the side, it's just like this bone goes pretty far out. So we really need to have some room for this eye socket. Alright, then we have the top of your skull, which is protruding a little bit. We have this part like this, and then we go all the way back, right? Then here is where there's this type of bone which goes like this. And if we want to suggest that this part is protruding a little bit, of course you could do like this, so add some form lines to it. But another part is to just, because here's the protruding goes away, here it just follows the shape of your head. Now this area is actually where you could draw a ribbon through. So there's a lot of muscles here. Let's not go into that all too much. But then here we go, and here we have this weird bridge going all the way to your back. Now this line is actually following the line towards your chin, but there's a let me show you. So this is protruding again a little bit, and then it goes backward. Now your teeth, like I draw here, are a little bit more situated to the front because they need to be functional as taking bites. So it wouldn't be working if they were facing inward, because, well, then it's really hard to take a bite. So they're facing outward a little bit. So this whole situated area over here is all facing outward. Lower part, and then again the chin is facing outward again, and it has a little bump approximately somewhere around here. So where your side of the jaw is, this is where your jaw is situated on the inside of this side bone. This is a little bit too far. Now, to suggest that this part is moving forward, there are still, like, it goes over it, but there are still parts underneath it here that you can see. Sorry, that's your teeth. You need to digest food, right? So we have that part over here. Now let's take this ribbon from the eye socket out, and we have this. Make it a little bit darker. I don't really know how to do that, but something like this. Now, somewhere here is a bone going inside your head, because that's where you hear, so you hear me speak. And then somewhere here is where the shape of the head goes back. But overall now we already have like a pretty distinct shape of the head. And what I'm adding here actually is, well, these lower teeth are so freaking long. They're almost like rabbits. So what I'm adding here, rabbit teeth. So what I'm adding here on the lower part is that actually, if you can feel on the top of your teeth, you'll feel that the roots of your teeth are actually inside your skull. So they actually give some form to your skull, like you can see over here. It's not my most beautiful drawing of a skull, but again, we're not aiming for perfection. We're just aiming for a basis ID. So what we end up is something like this. Now, if we really go into detail, is that you really want to add some form here, some shading. We have some stuff going on over here, and then there are cracks over the head, which we need as a baby to be born. Right. So we have a head here. Now I want to take it a little further, because now we know how to draw the head. So we have all these landmarks for the head, the nose, the skull, the protruding chin, and the teeth. So we understand how the form of the head is. But drawing this from your imagination is just freaking hard. So we need to make it a little bit simpler. Now, to make it a little simpler, I'm going to use another layer, and I'm going to use a different color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a box over this skull. So what you'll see is that there are certain parts that we have where the box is touching the skull. Now this is actually what we can use to draw the head from different angles. So let me show you what I mean with this. So now we have this box and we know where it hits the skull. We have some new landmarks that we can use to draw this skull from different angles if we just analyze where the landmarks are. So again, if we visualize this circle being here, or actually being somewhere around here, now we need to combine this skull with the earlier shape we drew, and then keep in mind these landmarks that we have. Now a couple of things that's always good to do is to draw over like a, I'm not sure if it's called a dorsal thing, but or whatever, but it's just a line going all over the straight side of the box. So now we have a really good understanding of this 3D skull. So let me copy these layers and go to my new chapter, the skull from different angles. Yes, I prepared this thing. So we have this skull over here, and what I'll do is I'll draw a couple of boxes from different angles and then walk you through drawing the skull in there, and I'll show you how I think while I'm doing these drawings. Now first thing you'll need to do is draw better boxes. Actually that's really important if you want to be able to draw, because well, drawing boxes is like the most important skill there is. So a typical box for your skull needs to be a little bit longer, a little bit narrow. Well, it needs to contain the shape of a head and not the shape of a telephone or a car. Alright, so first of all, what I already see is that this box is way too long compared to its depth. But it doesn't really matter, let's just go run with it. So the first thing we have is of course this touch point, right? We have this touch point over here. And if we go over it, so these are already things that normally I would visualize these without drawing the touch points, but now I'm making it very clear for you. So we have a touch point over here and probably over here. The same thing is going over here and over here. So we could draw like lines like this. Then we have this which is going way further, like I just said. So we'll have to visualize this box being like this. Yep, that's more like it. That's more like it. Alright, so we have this circle over here. Let me help you just erasing this freakingly shitty box. This is a better box. I am really struggling with figuring out the size of boxes before I start drawing, as you can see. Nonetheless, we are moving forward. So we have this sphere and then we have this thing going like this. Now let's start with the front of the head. So we have this going like this, and then we have this protruding part. And then, well, this protruding part is actually overlapping the eyes, so it's creating a little bit of foreshortening or depth. We can't really see the eyes because we're looking down on it, right? So we need to be aware of that. Now again, we have this middle line which goes like this, which is approximately like that. So this gives us an indication of where the keystone is. And again, the keystone, as you can feel yourself, I mean, it's a little bit protruded. There's a little bit of fat and muscles and skin over here, but it goes a little bit inward. So again, we have this overlapping area. Now we have this, that's this part of the skull, and then we have this, it's coming up a little bit here. It's really hardly visible. Now the face, of course, it's mostly straight, but it's a little bit curved. So we need to be aware of this, that this line doesn't go like this, but it goes a little bit more like this. Just a little, just a tad. This part, so we're entering this side. The dental area. Now this is funny because here is where this side of the bone is, and we have this part as well. And this is actually, this this part is aligned with each other, right? Here's exactly the same thing is going on. So we need to give it some depth. It's not a 2D thing here, it's not like paper, but we need to give it some depth. And I'm not really 100% sure what the shape is of this thing, but it flips around each other. So it goes a little bit like this. Then we have this side, which is like the side of the bone, this part. And then this goes in, of course. So we can hardly see this, the left eye socket of the skull. And like the right part, so this one, is almost not visible. We can show a little bit of it, so we suggest that it is over there, but we can almost not see it. And over here we go a little bit like this. Oh, for the teeth, I mean, we're not aiming for perfection. And then somewhere here is the jawbone. So again, think of this middle line. That's where this bump is. So we have this bump over here. We have these two parts protruding, and then we have this. And again, like here we can really show the inside of the, well, normally this would be the cheeks, of course, but here this is almost not visible. I think even that this jaw is a little bit too big. So let's do it like this. Now we move all around. And as you can see, the skull is actually longer, far longer. It's not like an orb, but it's like a really, like more like an egg shape, which will crack open, and it will show you life inside, which are brains. Living brains are in the inside. Alright, I'm losing myself. Hello. So we have this end of the sphere. Alright, so here we have we have some landmarks of the head, of the skull, and we've used them to tilt the box and eventually create a new skull within it. Now, as you can see, this might all need some more time to really enhance the feeling of a real skull, but in the end, I believe we're not aiming for a perfect skull because we're drawing, so we need to create the idea of having a skull, and let's see if it worked. So I think if you showed this drawing to somebody, they would definitely say that this is the idea of a skull, and that is exactly what we're aiming for. It doesn't need to look perfect from the start. We can just spend a lot of hours figuring out more solutions or getting a better understanding of this skull, but we actually got pretty far. So I think I'll just leave it with one box, because otherwise this video is going to be enormously long. So I hope this helped you. If you have any questions or comments, please share them underneath this video, and I wish you all the best of luck with creating skulls from different angles. Bye bye.